Imagine trusting your doctor. You go to him for advice, for care, for comfort in the most vulnerable moments of your life. He listens, he prescribes, he reassures. You believe he has your best interests at heart, because why wouldn't he? He's a doctor. But what if that same doctor, calm, professional, reassuring, was secretly murdering his patients? What if he was doing it not once, not 10 times, but hundreds of times? This isn't a horror movie. This isn't fiction. This is the story of Harold Shipman, the British family doctor who became one of the most prolific serial killers in modern history. A man who killed so many people that investigators believe his victims could number over 200. How did he get away with it for so long? And what does it tell us about trust, authority, and the dark side of human nature? Part 1. Early Life and Seeds of Darkness. Harold Frederick Shipman was born in 1946 in Nottingham, England. The middle child of 3, he grew up in a working-class household. His father was a truck driver, his mother a homemaker. By all accounts, young Harold was intelligent but distant. He wasn't particularly social, but he excelled in academics, especially science. The defining moment of his early life came when his mother, Vera, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. Harold was just 17. He watched closely as his mother's pain was managed with injections of morphine. The pattern etched itself into his mind. She'd be suffering. The nurse would arrive with an injection, and moments later, his mother would look calm, almost serene. Then, in 1963, Vera died. It devastated Harold, but it also planted a seed, a fascination with morphine and the power it gave to ease suffering, or to end life altogether. Part 2. Shipman becomes a doctor. After his mother's death, Shipman pursued medicine with determination. He studied at Leeds School of Medicine, qualifying in 1970. At first, he seemed like a promising young doctor. He married his childhood sweetheart, Primrose, and the couple went on to have 4 children. To neighbors and colleagues, Harold appeared respectable, family-oriented, and hardworking. But cracks soon appeared. In 1975, while working at a medical practice in Todmorden, Shipman was caught forging prescriptions for pethidine, a powerful opioid. He had become addicted, secretly injecting himself. This could have been the end of his medical career. He was fined and briefly entered rehab, but astonishingly, after just a short suspension, Shipman was allowed to return to work. The system had given him a second chance, and he would exploit that chance to deadly effect. Part 3. The Good Doctor, Facade. By the 1980s and 1990s, Harold Shipman had built a reputation as a dependable general practitioner in Hyde, Greater Manchester. He was calm, professional, and always available for house calls. His patients, often elderly, adored him. He was known simply as Dr. Shipman, the man who'd always be there when you needed him. But beneath this respectable exterior was something sinister. Shipman had near total control over his patients' medical records. He could prescribe drugs, sign death certificates, and determine causes of death with little scrutiny. And he used this power to begin killing. Part 4. The Murder Method. Shipman's method was chilling in its simplicity. He would visit a patient, often an older woman, but not exclusively. He'd chat, reassure them, maybe ask them to roll up their sleeve. Then, he would inject them with a lethal dose of diamorphine, pharmaceutical heroin. The patient would drift into unconsciousness, then die quietly. Shipman would then record the death as natural causes. If anyone asked, he'd explain it was a heart attack, a stroke, or simply old age. No one questioned him. Why would they? He was the doctor. And so the killings continued. Investigators later estimated that Shipman may have killed at least 215 patients, possibly more than 250. For comparison, that's more than Jack the Ripper, Ted Bundy, and Jeffrey Dahmer combined. Part 5. The Catherine Grundy Case. Shipman might have continued undetected if not for one mistake. In 1998, an elderly woman named Kathleen Grundy, wealthy, active, and in good health, was found dead in her home. Shipman was the attending doctor. He signed the death certificate, citing old age. But shortly afterward, Kathleen's daughter discovered something strange. Her mother's will had been changed shortly before her death, leaving her entire estate, worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, to Harold Shipman. Suspicious, the daughter contacted police. Kathleen's body was exhumed. Tests revealed lethal levels of diamorphine. This was the turning point. Shipman's carefully crafted image began to unravel. Part 6. The Investigation. Once police began looking deeper, the evidence piled up quickly. Shipman had been signing an unusually high number of cremation certificates for his patients. Undertakers had noticed that many of his patients died sitting upright in chairs, an odd pattern. Medical records had been altered after patients' deaths. Large amounts of diamorphine were missing, traced back to Shipman. Police interviewed former colleagues and families of the deceased. A chilling pattern emerged. Time and again, elderly patients had died suddenly and unexpectedly under Shipman's care. By September 1998, Shipman was arrested. Part 7. The Trial. The trial began in October 1999 at Preston Crown Court. Shipman faced charges for the murders of 15 patients and one count of forgery, the Grundy will. The prosecution presented a damning case: toxicology reports, forged documents, altered records, and witness testimonies. Shipman, calm as ever, denied everything. He showed little emotion, insisting on his innocence. But the jury wasn't convinced. In January 2000, Harold Shipman was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the recommendation that he never be released. Part 8. How did he get away with it? Analysis. This is the question that haunts people most. How did a doctor kill hundreds of people over decades without being caught? The answer lies in a combination of trust, authority, and systemic failures. Trust in doctors. Patients rarely question their doctors. In Britain, the GP is a pillar of the community. Shipman exploited that trust completely. Authority of death certificates. At the time, one doctor could sign off on cause of death with little oversight. Shipman used this to cover his tracks. Vulnerable victims. Most of his victims were elderly. Their deaths were easily attributed to natural causes. Families were grieving, not suspicious. Missed red flags. His earlier drug conviction should have barred him from practice. Instead, he was allowed back, trusted with vulnerable lives. Shipman thrived in this environment, a predator in plain sight, shielded by the very system meant to protect patients. Part 9. Aftermath and Legacy. After Shipman's conviction, the UK launched a massive public inquiry. The Shipman Inquiry, led by Dame Janet Smith, investigated every aspect of his crimes and their implications. The findings were staggering. Shipman had likely killed more than 215 patients, possibly closer to 250. He had operated undetected for over 20 years. The inquiry led to sweeping changes in British medicine, stricter rules on death certification, better monitoring of controlled substances, increased oversight of doctors' practices. But the damage was done. Trust in the medical profession was shaken. Many elderly patients became fearful of doctors. Families questioned past deaths. As for Shipman himself, he never admitted guilt. He remained cold, detached, and defiant in prison. On January 13, 2004, just one day before his 58th birthday, Harold Shipman was found hanging in his cell. He had taken his own life. Some saw it as justice. Others saw it as a way for him to escape responsibility, leaving questions forever unanswered. Conclusion: Harold Shipman wasn't a shadowy figure lurking in dark alleys. He wasn't a masked killer on the streets. He was a doctor, a man people trusted with their lives, a man who walked into homes, smiled, reassured, and then ended lives with a syringe. He betrayed not only his patients, but the very foundation of trust in medicine. And perhaps that's why his case is so terrifying. Because if you can't trust your doctor, who can you trust? Shipman's story is a chilling reminder that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a white coat and carries a stethoscope. So, what do you think? Was Shipman driven by a need for control, by echoes of his mother's death, or simply by the thrill of killing? And how can we prevent something like this from ever happening again?